The unmistakable sounds there of the Galician pipes, a sound that will almost certainly greet you as you enter the Plaza de Obradorio, the large square outside the cathedral in Santiago de Compostela. I'm Gary Swift. Hello and welcome to Bite Size Camino, the podcast for information and tips for the older pilgrim on any of the many caminos to Santiago de Compostela. In today's episode, I'll be continuing my talk about footwear and foot care, carrying on from the last episode where I spoke about caring for your feet and sock choices. If you haven't already listened to that episode, then I would suggest doing so because I believe it's important to select the socks that you'll be walking in before choosing your footwear, and caring for your feet as you walk is equally important. During my various Camino journeys, I've twice witnessed pilgrims walking their pilgrimage barefoot. Maybe they believe that this brought them closer to the experience of the original pilgrims. I don't know. However, I wouldn't recommend it unless you habitually walk barefoot regularly in your day-to-day life and your feet have hardened to cope with the wear and tear that will be imposed upon them. The rest of us mere mortals will almost certainly choose to wear some form of outer footwear to protect our precious feet. I'll go through several options that I considered and my thought processes, but I won't be recommending any specific makes because the choice available is wide and varied and everyone's feet and requirements are different. The physical weight of your footwear can have a big impact upon your choice. There's an old saying that a pound on your foot equates to 5 pounds on your back. I'm not sure how accurate this is, but essentially what it's saying is that every time you take a step, you are lifting weight. As an example, let's say you are walking a long Camino, 500 miles. The average adult takes approximately 2,000 steps to walk a mile. So on a Camino of 500 miles, you take 2,000 times 500, which is a million steps. If your footwear weighs only 1 pound extra, you'll have lifted that extra pound a million times. That's a lot of expended energy. Keep your footwear as light as possible, but adequate to give you the protection that you'll need to complete your Camino. Whatever footwear you eventually decide to walk in, you will almost certainly want to wear socks, as discussed in the last episode. When choosing your footwear, be sure to wear the socks that you'll be walking in when trying the footwear on. This will help to ensure you get a good fit. Every day your foot naturally expands slightly, just from bearing your weight and walking around. So, a good time to purchase your footwear is in the afternoon, possibly after a short walk, to give your feet a chance to spread. On your pilgrimage, due to the impact of your weight, the weight of your pack, and walking mile after mile, day after day, most probably in warm weather, your feet will swell even more. For this reason, to help prevent pinching and blisters, it's a good idea to buy footwear at least a half size bigger than you would normally choose. If you already know that your feet are prone to swelling, then you could go up a full size or even more. It's important to fully try out the footwear as much as possible before you purchase. Fasten or lace them up fully, walk around the store, bang the toes on the heels to ensure your foot doesn't slide around and your toes don't stub against the inside. Many reputable footwear stores, especially those dedicated to outdoor pursuits, will have a ramp or artificial hill that you can use to see how secure and how comfortable the footwear feels when going up and down steep slopes. Discuss your plans and requirements with the staff. The professionals in the store should assist you in making the right choice. But remember, some sales staff work on commission. So take your time and don't be pressured into choosing something that doesn't feel quite right. There are many ways to lace up boots and shoes. This helps them to accommodate different foot shapes or to assist with foot related issues. A simple change of lacing pattern can transform a boot or shoe from being okay into being very, very comfortable. I can't easily describe them here, but a Google search will bring up diagrams of the various lacing patterns designed to deal with different issues. Depending on your feet, it may be that each of your shoes or boots will benefit from a different lacing pattern. It may look a bit odd, but comfort is paramount, so don't be afraid to try them out and see what works for you. A lot of boot and shoe makers claim to offer comfort straight out of the box with no breaking in period required. I've never trusted these claims, and that's never been my experience. New footwear always feels a little stiff to some degree. There's no substitute for breaking in your footwear properly. Start with short walks, gradually increasing the distances, walking in all weathers. Deal with any issues or hotspots as they arise, changing lacing patterns if necessary. Your foot won't mold to the boot, but eventually the boot should mold to your foot and become very comfortable. The choice of footwear is very personal, and what works for one may not work for another. As a minimum, I would suggest the next step up from bare feet is sandals, especially in summer and if you're already accustomed to covering long distances in sandals. There are many designs and different materials to choose from, ranging from traditional leather to modern, quick drying synthetic materials, or a mix of the two. Whichever you choose, ideally they will be proper walking sandals, designed to protect your feet from the various terrains that you'll encounter on your journey, with good soles for grip and traction and protection from sharp stones. I've never walked a full Camino in sandals myself, although I do carry a lightweight pair to change into in the evening when the day's walking is done. This gives my feet a change of pressure points and allows them to air out fully after a hard day's walking. This has worked well for me. Many people do walk part or even the whole of their Camino in sandals. On our last Camino, after several days walking, my companion developed blisters and black toenails due to ill-fitting boots that hadn't been properly broken in. He was, however, carrying a decent pair of leather walking sandals for evening wear. He was able to complete the remainder of our Camino wearing just his sandals. From observation, most people choose to walk their Camino in boots or sturdy walking shoes. There is a vast range of both boots and shoes to choose from, so you should be able to find a pair that works well for you. I've included boots and shoes together because they usually have a very similar construction, the main difference being the height around the ankle. Boots and shoes range from traditional heavy leather boots to lightweight synthetic styles, though even the lightweight boots and walking shoes are generally heavier than trail runners, but they are worn successfully by many pilgrims. The higher ankle of boots may be welcomed by some for the extra protection they provide against twisted ankles and from stones or snow. This may be particularly welcome if your Camino is in the winter months. Which brings us to the question of waterproof versus non-waterproof footwear. Although for hill walking in the UK, especially in the colder, wetter months, I generally wear good quality waterproof boots, my preference for the Camino is for non-waterproof footwear. In my experience, waterproof footwear doesn't breathe anywhere near as well as most manufacturers would have you believe, which on warm days results in hot, sweaty, damp feet and damp socks, and this is a recipe for blisters. Also, if you encounter a string of wet consecutive days, eventually the water will get in. And when this happens, the waterproofing works against you because waterproof boots or shoes take a long time to dry properly. If they are thoroughly soaked, they are very unlikely to dry overnight. However, don't be tempted to put them close to heaters or fires to encourage them to dry. This will almost certainly hasten their demise if it doesn't ruin them straight away. They need to be allowed to dry naturally. Non-waterproof footwear definitely breathes better, keeping your socks and feet drier and cooler even on hot days. Yes, if you encounter days of wet weather, your feet will get wet, but non-waterproof footwear dries much more quickly. I've had soaking wet feet in the morning, but a couple of hours later, when the sun came out, my footwear dried completely, and a change into a pair of fresh dry socks is all that I've needed to allow me to continue my journey with dry, comfortable feet. If I've arrived at my evening accommodation with wet feet, I've changed into my sandals for the evening, and my wet footwear has dried overnight. If there's any available, stuffing them with crumpled newspaper helps with the drying process. Again, don't be tempted to force dry them, it will ruin them. There is another option which I've used successfully in the winter in the UK, but never had occasion to use on my Caminos, and this is to wear a pair of waterproof socks, such as sealskins, inside your wet boots. The warmth from your feet can help to dry the wet footwear as you walk, whilst keeping your feet dry. These socks have a breathable waterproof layer and are very effective at keeping water and cold out. I usually wear these with an inner sock for comfort. but as I generally walk my Caminos in the summer, they would be far too warm for me. They may, however, be an option for the colder, wetter months. I've saved my personal preference of footwear for last. After plenty of research and trial and error, I chose to walk my first Camino in a pair of lightweight but sturdy trail runners with a deep tread pattern. The pair I eventually chose were lighter than most of the boots and shoes available at the time, but offered good support. They had a chunky, grippy sole with toe protection and light padding around the top to help keep the stones and sand out. For the reasons already discussed, I opted for the non waterproof version. I wore my walking socks during the fitting process and bought a half size bigger than I would normally choose. I gave them a good try out in the store and they were comfortable straight out of the box. However, I still walked several miles to break them in and give them chance to mold to my feet, following which I made a couple of changes. Firstly, I found that the manufacturer's insole didn't provide me with sufficient arch support, so I switched these out for a pair of orthotic insoles, which made a massive difference. The new insoles took up slightly more room than the originals, so I had to change my lacing pattern to give me a little more room in the toe box area. I then isolated the toe box lacing from the ankle lacing with a surgeon's knot. This allowed me to lace the trail runners more tightly around the ankle and prevent my foot sliding forward. This worked out perfectly, and the trail runners fit like a glove and were very, very comfortable. I actually wore them on two more Caminos and many walks in between without any problem. However, I pushed my luck on a subsequent Camino. They were so comfortable I just didn't want to part with them. A few days into the Camino, the midsole collapsed, and I had to walk for several days before I could replace them. Taping my feet helped, but I still ended up with massive blisters. I learnt my lesson on that occasion. I've already touched on having a change of footwear available for the evening. This is a good idea because it gives your feet a chance to rest and air out, and your walking footwear a chance to air and dry out. The choice here is entirely yours and what you feel comfortable with. On my first Camino, I took a pair of Crocs. Not exactly stylish, but very lightweight and incredibly comfortable after a long day's walking. They're also waterproof, so good for the shower. The only problem I had with the Crocs was their size. They take up a lot of room in the backpack. On later Caminos, I've tried flip flops or sliders, which are okay. They're lightweight and pack small, but don't offer much in the way of support or protection. On my last Camino, I opted for a pair of lightweight, quick drying synthetic sandals, which worked out really well, and I'll be taking with me again later this year. In summary, look after your feet and they will look after you, mile after mile, day after day. Choose socks and footwear carefully and don't be afraid to make changes. If something doesn't feel right, or if you feel a hot spot or issues developing, don't push on and say, I'll deal with it at the next stop. If at all possible, stop and deal with it straight away, even if that's only to apply a piece of tape until you can deal with it properly later. Your feet will thank you and it'll make your journey more comfortable and enjoyable. Next time, I'll be discussing backpacks and luggage. I'm Gary Swift, and if you've enjoyed this episode of Bite Size Camino, please give me a rating or review. It really does help. And in the meantime, buen camino.